Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on any purchase over $10. See the description below for details. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to another edition of the Magic the Gathering Market Watch. Now, last weekend was the first weekend we saw the Ravnica Allegiance cards in competitive play. There's definitely some price impacts from those results. But maybe the big story of the week is actually Commander and how some of these new cards are interacting with existing cards and how the Commander community is taking notice of that. A lot of big price shifts and some random cards. We're going to talk about all of it and more. Quickly before we get started though, just a fast reminder, if you check out the description below, you'll find a few ways to support the channel, one of which is our Patreon page. You're also going to find product links on Amazon and Flipside Gaming, still offering a promo code for our viewers. Hopefully you can save a little cash while you support the channel. And they actually have a pretty good deal this week on Dragon Shield sleeves, 100 count for $7.99 a piece. Not a bad deal if you're looking for them, so just wanted to point that out. As always, though, thank you not only to the folks that look at those links, but to all of you. You all make the channel what it is, so thank you. I appreciate each and every one of you, and let's get into it. Okay, we'll begin, as we always do, with the top 5 cards from standard sets that have lost value this week. Just a quick reminder, we will not be looking at Ravnica Allegiance cards in this video in particular, because we did a companion video a couple days ago on those. I'll link it at the end in case you missed it. We're going to begin with a couple honorable mentions. The first one is History of Benalia, down 54 cents to $14.97. Now, this is still a very solid standard card. Is it worth $15? Well, maybe not. I do think it will come down a little more in the coming days. However, if you look at last weekend's results at the Star City Games Open, the second place deck, Bant Flash, had 4 of these in the main. The third place deck, Azorius Aggro, had 4 of these in the main. So if those decks start to take off more and more in the coming weeks, then this could stabilize, maybe even go up. But I do think if it just settles into a couple of decks in a rather diverse format, which is what I'm hoping to see, then it most likely will go down at least a little bit. Alright, our second honorable mention is Resplendent Angel, going down 64 cents to $14.19. This stands to lose a lot more value, I think, just simply because it didn't do a whole lot last weekend at the Star City Games Open or the Star City Games Classic. I expect big losses in the coming weeks unless something changes. Number 5, Karn, Scion of Urza, down 65 cents to $20.99. Karn is not seeing a ton of play nowadays. He is still seeing some play, and we'll talk about that in a second, but I do think it's not really enough play to warrant this $21 price tag. I do think he will lose more value, again, unless something changes in week 2 or week 3. But where did we see Karn in week 1? Well, in the Star City Games Open, there was an Esper mid-range deck running 2 of these in the sideboard that came in 5th place. First place, though, in the Classic tournament was an Esper Control deck running 2 of these in the main. Now, most of the Esper Control decks aren't running Karn, but that particular one was and did very well with a couple copies, so it is worth noting, if nothing else. Number 4 is Tattered Mummy from Magic 2019. You can find these in the Liliana Planeswalker deck, 4 copies there. Down 70 cents to $1.04. You can also find this in the Black Welcome deck, which they give to new players at game stores for free. Now, there were people manipulating the prices of some of these cards from these welcome decks, and finally it looks like they're coming down. Still, $1.04 is a little expensive for a card like this, and I wouldn't pay it. But it does interact pretty well with another card we're going to be talking a lot about in this video, so more to come on that. Number 3 is Arclight Phoenix, down 93 cents to $24.27. So it goes down a little bit this week, I think more due to the fact that it didn't see a lot of successful play in Standard last weekend. But Modern, it still looks amazing. Now, in Standard, there was a Is It Drake deck that did well. However, it wasn't running Arclight Phoenix. And that's not too unusual. We saw a lot of that towards the end of the last Standard season, too. Now, in Modern, however, at the Star City Games Classic, we did see an Is It Phoenix deck in 4th place and 5th place. So I do think this will stabilize relatively quickly. Number 2 is Air Elemental from the Blue Welcome deck, Magic 2019 variant here, down $1 to 90 cents. So similar to the other card we talked about a few moments ago, feels like maybe this sort of manipulation is starting to come to an end. 90 cents, still expensive though. Number 1, there he is, Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, down $1.08 to $50. $50 is still expensive. The card comes down a little this week, but it saw tons of play. I think basically it only came down because it had such a high price point to begin with. Second place in the Star City Games Open, 2 copies in the Bant Flash deck. 4th and 7th place in that same tournament, Esper Control was running 4 copies in each of those. Move over to the Star City Games Classic. 1st and 5th place, again, you had Esper Control with 4 in the main. In the 2nd place spot, Bant Nexus with 3 in the main. Then go over to the Modern Classic. 2nd place is Azorius Control with 2 in the main. Yeah, Teferi's still everywhere. All right, let's move on to the top 5 cards from standard sets that have gained value this week. Coming in at number 5, Isolated Chapel at 49 cents to 4.94. Not too surprising here because Esper control decks looked amazing last weekend all over the place. There was even some pretty interesting Esper mid-range decks too. This was, of course, a key part of those mana bases. Number 4, Arcades the Strategist, up 51 cents to 7.62. Okay, did the Arcades deck do anything last weekend? Of course, we talked about this over the previous weeks, how it actually could work really well with High Alert. No, didn't really do anything in Standard. But I don't think that's hurting the momentum of this card all that much because it's really Commander players that are trying to buy into these strategies. And we're going to see another card that moved quite a bit this week because of this type of strategy in just a few moments. Number 3 is Alenda the Dusk Rose, up 63 cents to 14.50. Okay, so you probably know why this is going up in value because of the interaction this has with Teysa Karlov. Teysa Karlov, you see her on the right there. Take a good look at her, read her carefully because we're going to reference her about 50 more times before this video is over, okay? So Alenda plays really well with Teysa. More so for Commander than anything. I did see some Mardu brews of Aristocrats and Standard happening with Alenda early on, but recently it feels like they are leaving her behind probably because she's a little too fragile coming in as a 1/1 for 4. And as a matter of fact, the Aristocrats decks, whether you're looking at Mardu or Rakdos, they didn't perform very well last weekend. Now, maybe that can change in the coming weeks, but regardless, I don't really have high hopes in Standard for Alenda. However, much like the card we just looked at, I don't think it matters to Commander players how this is doing in Standard. A lot of Commander folks are building Teysa decks, and this will be a key part of those decks. Number 2 is another Dominaria land with Hinterland Harbor, up 86 cents to 5.99. Now, much like the card we looked at a few moments ago, this is a part of some big mana bases coming out of week 1. This is in decks like Sultai Midrange, Bat Nexus, Simic Nexus, and Simic Climb. Number 1, Midnight Reaper, up $1.19 to 2.78. So this card looked pretty good last weekend. Sultai Midrange came in first at the open. There were 2 copies of this in the main. Of course, Aristocrats decks are trying to play this, but like I said, they did not have a great weekend. But maybe, just maybe in this case, more importantly, Teysa Commander decks are just really popular right now. Another card that's going to play well there. Okay, let's move on to Modern and the top 5 Modern legal cards that have lost value this week. And again, you're still going to see a lot of influence here from cards that were reprinted in Ultimate Masters. Number 5, Liliana the Veil from Innistrad, down $2.04 to $80.74. Of course, this was reprinted as a Mythic Rare in Ultimate Masters. All these Lilianas are still moving a little bit as they're trying to find their price point after the reprinting. And I don't think it's going to go down all that much more, maybe just a little bit. It's just such a huge card. Even with the extra copies out there, you'll find this in a number of important Modern decks like Jund, Golgari Midrange, and others, as well as some Legacy builds too. Number 4, Surgical Extraction for Modern Masters 2015, down $2.17 to $40.49. This was a great sideboard card against KCI decks. Now, recently, of course, Krark Clan Ironworks got banned in the Modern format, which means maybe this card isn't as desirable as it was just a few weeks ago. With that being said, though, it's still a pretty good sideboard card for Modern. There are other decks out there like Dredge and such that will not want to see this. So I do think it will continue to see play, but not in the same amounts that it was seeing play when people were so worried about KCI. So yeah, this will go down a little more before it stabilizes. Number 3, Engineered Explosives from Modern Masters, down $2.41 to $36.76. This was reprinted in Ultimate Masters as a rare, and even before that reprinting, this card was seeing a little bit less play percentage-wise, so it was soft to start with, but then of course the reprinting really knocked a lot of value off of it. Aside from that, we just had the KCI banning. This was part of that Ironworks combo deck, so it's taking a hit because of that too. All in all, this is going to lose more value. Now, does it see Modern play? Of course it does. You'll still find this many times in the main of War decks, which are popular right now. You'll also find this in a lot of sideboards and even some Legacy sideboards, so it's not going to completely lose all its value, but I do think it's going to lose more. Number 2, Tarmogoyf from Modern Masters 2015, down $2.60 to $57.39 this week. This card has a lot in common with Liliana. It was reprinted as a Mythic Rare in Ultimate Masters, that's why it softened up a little bit. Still sees a lot of play in some of the same decks she does, Jund, Golgari Midrange, and other Modern Legacy and Vintage builds. I do think these will settle down in the coming weeks and find their price points. Number 1, Snapcaster Mage, down $2.91 to $65.85. This is the one from Modern Masters 2017. And again, another card that was reprinted as a Mythic in Ultimate Masters. You'll find this in big decks like Grixis Death Shadow, Azorius Control, Jeskai Control, and other Modern, Legacy, and Vintage decks too. Alright, another big week for the market, so I'm going to do the top 10 Modern legal cards that have gained value this week. Although, most of them aren't really moving because of Modern, which you'll see in a few moments. They're actually moving because of Commander interactions. Number 10, Blood Crypt from Dissension, up 233 to 2449. This is now standard legal. Maybe that's some of the reason that this card is getting a little bit hotter right now. However, this is seeing tons of Modern play in some really big decks currently. You're going to find this in Grixis Death Shadow, Dredge, Jund, Hollow One, Mardu Pyromancer, and a whole lot more. This is a card to watch, especially if these decks continue to stay hot in the format. Number 9 is Crater Hoof Behemoth. Two versions here. Avacyn Restored going up $1.95 to $26.99. Modern Masters 2017 going up $2.37 to $27.62. Now, this does see some legacy play in Elves decks. However, that's not really why it's moving this week. This is one of those cards that people want for Commander. In particular, interactions with Nikya of the Old Ways. This one-sided Mana Flare is a great way to power out some really big things in Commander and have some huge turns, and of course decks like that would love Crater Hoof. Number 8, Jace the Mind Sculptor from World Wake goes up $2.50 to $108.03. Now, Jaces have been hot recently. We've seen the Masters 25 one creeping up. We saw the Eternal Masters one creeping up. Now, World Wake actually creeps up and gets to a pretty high price point. It's in so many good decks. Maybe none bigger right now than Azorius Control in Modern, but it is in various other Modern, Legacy, and Vintage decks too. It just sees play in so many places. It's so iconic. It was not reprinted, of course, in Ultimate Masters. It was reprinted in Masters 25, like I said, but that's been a little while now. And as these Masters 25 copies start to dry up a little bit, the price is creeping up. Number 7 is Woodland Bellower. It goes up $2.95 this week to $6.44. Believe it or not, I have seen a Modern build with this card, and it works with Prime Speaker Vannifar. Now, I don't know. Will that get there in Modern? I'm a little skeptical, but what I'm not skeptical about is Commander. Commander players are building around Prime Speaker Vannifar, and a lot of cards are moving because of that. This is just one of them. Number 6, Thrumming Stone. This has been hot for a while now, up $3.32 to $33.50. Again, I have seen some Modern brews, but I do think this is going to be more of a Commander thing. This works very well with the new card Persistent Petitioners. Number 5, Massacre Worm, up $3.81 to $24.99. This is another card that's been hot recently because of Teysa interactions for Commander. Number 4, 1,000 Year Elixir. Lorwyn going up $1.06 to $7.55. Commander Anthology going up $4.15 to $9.94. The other copy of the card's going up a little bit this week too, just not as much as these other two copies. Now this is another card that will play very well with Prime Speaker Vannifar in Commander. Number 3 is Send Triplets up $4.78 to $34.99. Now this is a card that I felt has been undervalued for Commander for a while now. Has a pretty big price jump this week. Partially, this could be due to a mention that it got a couple weeks back on the Command Zone podcast where they talked about how Tome of the Guild Pact, another new card, would fit well into that deck. So maybe that brought some attention on it, but for the most part, this was kind of overdue. I'm sure this will get reprinted in the coming years in some Commander product, but who knows when that will be. Number 2, Athreos, God of Passage, up $5.58 to $23.50. I'll let you guess why. Yep, another card that's going to interact with Teysa in Commander. And number 1, another Commander card here. Marble Titan, Tempest going up $5.55 to $6.78. 9th edition going up $8.17 to $8.90. This works very well with High Alert and Arcades, which we saw earlier, for all those Commander folks out there trying to build those decks. Okay, let's move on to our Vintage Spotlight. This is where we look at some cards that are played in Legacy or Vintage, or sometimes 93-94 format, and also cards that are important to collectors. First, we have Stoneforge Mystic down $2.03 to $37.99, and this is a card that goes up every time there's about to be a banned and restricted list update. A lot of people speculate maybe it's going to become unbanned from Modern. When it doesn't happen, it goes back down. That's what you're seeing this week. Next, we have Time Spiral. This is a reserve list card going up $4.12 to $64.99. This card has gotten hot recently. There is a High Tide deck in Legacy that's doing pretty well with this card. It's also a really good Commander card. And I do think Vintage Cube on Magic Online last month may have brought this card to a lot of people's attention too, just because they saw this played and saw it streamed quite a bit. Sylvan Library from Legends goes up $7.40 to $119.95. Other copies of this card have been hot recently. This week, Legends is the big mover. Another card that's important in a lot of legacy, vintage decks, good commander card too. Well, here's an unlimited card. We knew there had to be some on here. Pure Lace goes up 36.31 to 44.97. Unlimited cards have been hot recently. This one's taking a big jump this week, though, because some high-grade copies were put out there on the marketplace, and that's really what caused the bump. Shazam Jin is our special guest this week, going up 247.97 to 2001.95.94, and this, of course, is a reserve list card. Now, last weekend, the Tabernacle of Hendril Vale made an appearance on the show after many, many months of being missing. Well, why not have Shazam Jin come back as well for old time's sake? This card is going up a little bit this week because, again, there's higher grade copies out there in the marketplace. As a matter of fact, there's a near mint signed copy, and that could be bumping the price a little bit too. And last card in this section, Time Twister from Unlimited goes up $350.02 to $2,999.99. This is also on the reserve list, and this is another card that has some higher grade copies this week on the marketplace, propelling the price a little bit higher. One of the copies is even a graded card, so that will have a little bit to do with the price jump. Alright, time for the Commander Spotlight. So many cards to talk about. I'm going to speed around this again and try to go really quick because there's so much content here. It's amazing to me, though, when I started doing these videos a couple of years back, I barely talked about cards moving because of Commander. It would happen occasionally, especially if like the Commander decks had just come out or something like that. Now it's just a regular thing. It just goes to show you how big Commander has become. One card that's slipping, Rapid Hybridization. This is from Commander 2015, going down to $1.84 to $1.99. Now, the reason this is dropping is because we found out recently that there's going to be a reprinting of this in the Simic Guild kit, which is coming out in a few weeks. So it softened the card up a little bit. Okay, next we have Land Tax from 4th edition, going up $1 to $19.99. Always a decent Commander card. It did get featured pretty prominently on game nights about a week and a half ago, so that probably brought a little more attention to it. Other copies of the card are remaining stable or going up a little bit too, but this one was moving the most. Sylvan Tutor from Portal goes up $1.07 to $51.07. Generally, green cards have been popular for Commander recently. A lot of good green cards came out with Guilds of Ravnica, and now we're seeing even more with Ravnica Allegiance. So combine that with the fact that it's hard to find this card in good condition because it is a Portal card, and it is creeping up again. Victimize. Alright, this is the Magic 2015 copy, going up $1.16 to $2.75. The other copies of this card are moving a little bit too, but this one is moving the most, and again, you can probably guess why. Plays pretty well with Teysa. Naya Panorama from Commander 2013 goes up $1.23 to $1.79. Big percentage jump here, but the main reason is market manipulation. There's somebody that put a number of copies at a very high price point online this week, so it pushed the price. Don't get fooled by this one. Living End goes up $1.24 to $21.47. We've been talking about how these suspend cards have been hot because of their interaction with Electro Dominance. Now that could be something that happens in Modern or Commander. I do think more so Commander. But if there is a deck that has the best chance of doing well in Modern, I would say it's the Living End as Foretold deck running Electro Dominance. I think out of all the plans to use Electro Dominance, that one feels the most solid to me. Still don't know if it's going to get there. But like I was saying, it still doesn't matter to Commander players. They still want to pick up these suspend cards. Regal Behemoth up $1.26 to $4.50. Another card that's going to play well into these Nikia strategies that want big mana. Concordant Crossroads. Now, this is the Chronicles copy, going up $1.31 to $21.31. It is truly the end days when we have a Chronicles card going up on the market watch, but here we are. Now, this card got super hot recently, at least the Legends version of it. This version was creeping up slowly during that time, but not enough really to talk about on the market watch, but this is a pretty big spike. Why is that? Well, initially, like I said, a lot of good green cards were entering the Commander format recently. That's part of it. Cards started to heat up then, but this card also works pretty well with Prime Speaker Vanifar. Timna the Weaver, I should point out this is only available in foil in Commander 2016, up $1.45 to $15.22. I think you can guess why. Of course, this interacts very well with Teysa. Skull Clamp from the original Commander series, up $1.63 to $6.98. So we looked at this card last week. Some other variants were moving up last week too. Most of the other variants have calmed down and stabilized, but this one is still moving. Again, on game nights about a week and a half ago, we saw a Teysa Karlov deck, which sparked a lot of people's imaginations. We saw some cool interactions with this card in that deck. Because of that, it did bring some attention to it. Vindictive Lich up $1.66 to $4.73. Yup, you guessed it, another Teysa card here. Black Market, again because of Teysa. Mercadian Mask going up $1.42 to $7.39. Commander 2017 going up $1.70 to $6.99. Commander 2015 going up $1.82 to $6.99. Sower of Discord goes up $1.83 to $3.49. Another card that has been showing up in Teysa builds. This is also very good in the Xantcha decks though too. Bloom Tender up $1.88 to $40. Well, it is an Eventide card. I'm going to use my one per video. During that time period of Magic, print runs were lower, so that's one of the reasons why this card tends to get spiky. But aside from that, another card that will play well into these Nikya builds that will contribute to the big mana. Vampiric Tutor from Eternal Masters goes up $205 to $52.25. Well, clearly there's a lot of attention right now in black and white cards for Commander, but just generally, this is a great card for Commander and Vintage. Flesh Carver goes up $2.43 to $4. I'll let you guess why. Yup, it's Teysa again. Last Chance from Portal goes up $2.54 to $7.84. Now, this card is a little hard to find now in good condition, and it does see a little Commander play. However, the main reason for this movement is somebody put some high-grade copies up for sale this week in the marketplace, bumping the average price a little bit. Hazan Tamar. This is a reserve list card from Legends, and whenever these reserve list Gold Legends cards go up, I try to point them out to you. This week, Hazan goes up $267 to $179.95. Cold Storage from Tempest. Okay, this is not on the reserve list, but it was never reprinted. Up $279 to $380. This is an interesting card. Why is it going up in value this week? Because Rakdos the Showstopper interacts very well with that card. Mana Crypt, of course, another classic card for both Commander as well as Vintage. The Eternal Masters copy going up $392 this week to $172.60. This card just ignited once we found out it was not going to be in Ultimate Masters. Expropriate, of course, Expropriate's on here. Up $466 to $39.99. This card got another mention this past week in the Command Zone podcast. Feels like that happens almost every week now. On the Game Nights episode a week and a half ago, it set up the win. It looked amazing. Just a lot of attention on this. Leviathan from the Dark goes up $529 to $731. Another card that actually just had some near mint copies get thrown out on the marketplace this week, pushing the average price point a little bit. This looked like a buyout at first, but once I looked into it, I don't think that's what happened. Great Oak Guardian, Commander Anthology going up $1.69 to $1.99. Commander 2015 going up $5.30 to $5.69. I would expect that Commander Anthology price to jump pretty soon too, because that Commander 2015 spike just occurred. So keep a close eye on that. But another card that plays well with Prime Speaker Vannifar. Hallowed Spirit Keeper up $5.95 to $6.67. We've been looking at this card through the whole episode. Another card that's going to play well with Teysa. And one more card for that Teysa deck, Crave the Unredeemed, up $6.22 to $7.99. Alright, Pauper's kind of slow this week, so that does conclude the Market Watch. Now, Monday, we're going to be back with our tournament roundup, where we look at which cards from Ravnica Allegiance perform best over the course of the weekend when it comes to competitive play. But until then, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible through the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page, as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.